Evaluation of cooperative societies regulation on housing provision in Ogun State, Nigeria. Why this study? Basically, there has been series of submission as regards the housing shortage, not only in Nigeria, even outside. But the national housing policy has been able to mandate some housing providers, which include governments, individuals, agencies, and cooperatives, to ensure that housings are being provided for the masses. But nevertheless, the impact of the cooperatives have not been fully known, most especially in the area of their regulation, which actually guide their operation. And according to Ebenkosi in 2020, proof a study that is house ownership in Nigeria is less than 20%. So, which means the mandates given by the National Housing Policy for the house providers still need to be improved upon. Likewise, Lanisa 2020 posted on the need to involve cooperative society in enhancing its members' socio-economic well-being. And also, Satire White 2020 has emphasized the importance of housing cooperative in housing provision, especially for the low-income earners. And of course, Baporika in 2021 identified cooperative societies as a noble model of housing provision. So from this submission, we can see that the impact of cooperative as regards the housing provision in Nigeria must be well known and felt by Nigerians as well. Now, statement of the research problem. According to the Ogun State government in 2019, they submitted a population of over 70 million people and recorded a housing shortage of over 1 million housing units in Ogun State. You can see the correlation, 70 million people, and of course, in correlation with 1 million housing units shortage in Ogun State. Likewise, Ojalowo and Lossi in 2021 put the Nigerian housing deficit at 17 million housing units. That is a nation. We can see the housing shortage, and of course, we can be termed as housing deficit is growing higher and higher, more and more in Nigeria. Something must be done urgently. Likewise, Masadu in 2021 submitted that the operation of cooperative housing has recorded a housing provision of over 50 success rates. This is done in Nigeria without consideration in Ogun State. It was recorded by Masadu that 50% success rate has been executed by cooperatives. But the impact of cooperative in Ogun State must be well felt, must be known within this clause of 50% success rate. Are they actually contributing at all? So, unknown impact of cooperative regulation on housing provision in Ogun State, this actually prompted my study. There is unknown impact of cooperative regulations on housing provision, which of course stipulates that no existing study on the impact of regulation. And of course, existing studies focus on other areas such as housing finance and development. So existing studies at all that have been in existence, they only focus on housing finance and development without taking cognizance of the regulation, which is the major aspect of which this scheme must be carried out. Likewise, those in existence have not implemented housing regulation. And of course, contribution of cooperative society within the success rate of over 50% not known. So in Ogun State, according to Masadu, this 50% success rate in Nigeria, the contribution of cooperative society must be known within. Is it actually contributing more within this clause of 50% success rate? And here comes my research questions. What are the attributes of cooperative societies involved in housing provision in Ogun State? So the attributes must be known in terms of role, most especially when we are talking about regulation. Likewise, what are the areas of involvement of cooperative society in housing provision in Ogun State? There are areas of which they are involved while providing housing for the masses in Ogun State. What are the regulations guiding cooperative society on housing provision in Ogun State? So basically, the regulations that are guiding their operation must be well known, and how they are being executed? What is the level of compliance of the cooperatives to the regulations in the study area? So these existing regulations, are they really complying with it? So this must be known in this research. Likewise, what are the regulatory factors affecting the operations of cooperative societies in housing provision in Ogun State? So if at all, if peradventure they are complying, is there any factor that are inhibiting their activities? So here comes my aim. This study aims at evaluating the impact of regulatory factors on the operation of cooperative society in Ogun State, Nigeria, with a view to formulating policies that will improve their compliance and viability. And to achieve these aims are the following objectives. 1, to examine the attributes of cooperative societies involved in housing provision in the study area. To evaluate the involvement of cooperative societies in housing provision in Ogun State. To assess the regulation guiding cooperative societies on housing provision in Ogun State. To evaluate the level of compliance of the cooperatives to the regulation in the study area. And the last one, to analyze the regulatory factors affecting the operation of cooperative societies in housing provision in Ogun State. So to achieve these objectives, here are my research hypotheses to be able to test for the validity of this study. 1, there are no significant involvement of cooperative society in housing provision in Ogun State. Are there really any significant improvement at all? This must be known. There are no significant regulations guiding the cooperative society on housing provision in Ogun State. And of course, there are no regulatory factors guiding the operation of cooperative society in housing provision in the study area. Then, significance of this study. 1, this study will involve a framework of housing cooperative as a viable strategy for housing provision in Ogun State, Nigeria. So a framework that will now guide, if at all there is any lapses as regard the implementation of the regulation, the framework, which of course may be in form of policy, must be evolved. Another one, it will identify the regulatory issues and factors affecting housing provision through cooperatives in Ogun State. So significantly, it also identifies some regulatory issues, which of course may be in form of factors that may be affecting their operation. Then the research will influence policy direction in the use of cooperative strategy for housing delivery in Ogun State. And of course, finally, it will identify new strategy that can facilitate housing provision in Ogun State and Nigeria. Then under my literature review, these are the areas I've been able to carry out my literature review. And according to the report submitted, they are well explained there. And I just brought out just 5 major areas in line with my focus. Let me continue so that. Then research gap. What is the gap that I intend to bridge as regards the study? The literature review so far were focused on formally operated types of cooperative society. Let me make this one known first. I know we are very conversant with this. The research that have been on as regards cooperative activities has been centered on formally operated. While the informally one, that is those ones that are not, how will I put it, are not carried out by civil servants, public servants, and the likes, are neglected. There's no research on that. So that's why I'm centering my focus on informally. That is, those ones that will join outside, whereby anybody, even the artisans, the traders, and the likes can as well join. So I'm focusing my research on that because of the depth of knowledge on that. And likewise, in 2017, the informally operated cooperative society, according to look in 2017, that the 38.3% represented the success rate achieved. The Masadu in 2021 also submitted a shortfall of 50% success rate of housing provision in Nigeria. So apart from that area of concern, I want to ensure that this clause of 50% success rate is cooperative impact actually within this success. Then if it is within, is it high or low? So I want to know. This study is actually bringing up that. So therefore, my study focuses on the impact of regulations of cooperative societies in the provision of good quality housing as operated by the informal operative society within the central senatorial district of Ogun State, with an attempt at determining their contribution within the 50% success rate of housing provision in Ogun State. So to actually determine this, I'm focusing my study on regulation. So through the regulation, I'll be able to know their impact. So here comes my theoretical framework. This is the dramatical illustration of my theoretical framework. We can see that basically 5 major theories are combined together, which evolved from neoclassical theory. So these 5 major theories, which are democratic, regulation, agency, social relationship, resource dependent theories, are basically for cooperative activities. So which now evolve my institutional theory of this study. So from there, I've been able to evolve my conceptual framework. So how did my conceptual framework evolve? I consider my objectives, and I listed all the independent variables which I'm going to get the data for as regard my study. So under involvement, we can see the land acquisition, housing construction, land loan disbursement, land documentation, and engagement of professionals. So these are their involvement. Then under the attributes of cooperative, which of course are basically their laws, I have membership, finance, democratic control, regulation, registration and legal status, education and training. So we could see at the two ends, they revolve around the word cooperatives. So the word cooperative encompasses all forms of cooperative, even though we have 10 forms of cooperative in existence in Ogun State. So above, I'm having housing development, which are being carried out by my area of concern, that is my sampling frame, because I actually selected just 5 forms of cooperative out of the total 10 in existence in Ogun State. And I have a genuine reason for that, because they are the forms in which the total number of their total number are higher than others. So for me to be able to get enough data, that's why I've selected these 5 forms in line with the submission of my supervisor, Professor Okoko. So CTCS is a form. CTCS means Cooperative Trust and Credit Society. CMS means Cooperative Multipurpose Society. CMU means Cooperative Multipurpose Union. Then CTCU means Cooperative Trust and Credit Union. Then HCS means Housing Cooperative Society. I actually consider that to be able to correlate that with other forms, because I'm focusing on housing. That's why I consider Housing Cooperative Society in Ogun State as well. So there I could see the involvement of my conceptual framework under the control of government policy and regulation. That is, government actually regulates both the attributes and the involvement of the cooperative. And of course, there involve the regulatory factor. That is the factor that determines whether these cooperatives are viable or not, which I need to determine, which includes social factor, economic factor, financial factor, technological factor, the environmental factor, which eventually will now give me the impact of their regulation. Here comes my methodology. So under my methodology, I actually consider the mixed method, that is both the qualitative and quantitative design approach. Basically, in cooperative settings, we normally have a kind of informal relationship. That is why I consider the qualitative aspect of it, so that I'll be able to have a kind of interview with the members and as well as the leaders. So the population of all the registered societies in Ogun State is usually 12,120 cooperative societies, 12,120 cooperative societies, which of course are culminated in all the 10 forms of cooperative society as listed there. They spread across all the 10 zonal branches in all the 20 local government areas of Ogun State. So these 10 forms are spread across all the 10 zonal branches. So these 10 zonal branches, they fall within the 20 local governments of Ogun State. So for my sampling frame, which I consider just 5 forms, so I've been able to determine my sampling frame to be 10,772. 10,772 within these 5 forms that I'm going to work upon. And my source of data will be through the use of 2 sets of structured questionnaires. One will be for the leader, while the other one will be for the members. And for the qualitative aspect of it, I'm going to consider the secondary data, which will be generated from journals, magazine, government policies, cooperative housing programs, brochure, cooperative bylaws, and so on and so forth. Here comes the distribution of the study population across the 10 forms of Ogun State as at 2023. So this is the data about the population across the 10 forms of cooperative in Ogun State. And those 5 that are highlighted are my area of concern. And here, I've been able to determine the sampling size of the study for those 5 forms that I intend to work upon. So, using Poitras formula, I've been able to determine my sample size, which is 560, with a sampling frame of 10,772 cooperative societies. And of course, to be able to administer these questionnaires, I'm going to take the leaders, that is the executive of the cooperative societies, and the members as my correspondents. Then how do I test for the validity of these instruments I'm going to use? A pilot study will be carried out using just 5% of the entire sample size to be able to determine how valid my results will eventually be by the time I go for the larger gathering of the data. Then the reliability of the instruments, this will be determined using the data obtained from the pilot study before the larger scale study is carried out. Then how do I analyze my data? I consider all the objectives and I'm able to evolve the analysis method for each objective. Now for the objective 1, I'm going to employ, I'm going to use descriptive statistics and chi-square analysis to be able to examine the attributes of cooperative societies involved in housing provision in Ogun State. Then for the objective 2, I'm going to use variance, analysis of variance, to be able to evaluate the involvement of cooperative societies in housing provision. And for the objective 3, I'm going to use correlation analysis to be able to assess the regulations guiding on housing provision in Ogun State. And for the objective 4, I'm going to use covariance and regression analysis to be able to evaluate the level of compliance of the cooperative to the regulation in the study. And finally, I'm going to use multiple correlation to analyze the regulatory factors affecting the operation of cooperative society in Ogun State. And here is a table that shows in detail the objective, method of data analysis, dependent variable, independent variables, and the purpose of data analysis. That is, why am I choosing a particular analysis method to analyze my objective. So under the first objective, as I've said, I'm going to employ descriptive statistics and chi-square. So here comes the results of the whole study. What am I going to contribute eventually? What is this study going to propagate eventually? That is my contribution to the knowledge. One, is going to improve understanding of the attributes of cooperative housing society in Ogun State in the areas of membership, finance, democratic control, registration and legalization, and education and training. Let me just say this. I actually point out this contribution in line with my objectives so that there will be a flow from the beginning to the end. Then the second contribution shall be to encourage the existing cooperative society for onward registration and operation of a regulated cooperative housing scheme. Then the third contribution shall be to intimate cooperatives on the need to follow the existing regulations through a framework that will be endear them to abide accordingly. Then the fourth contribution shall be to create a modality for assessing the cooperative society's level of compliance to the existing regulations by the people of Ogun State and Nigeria in general. And finally, it shall be to extend knowledge on militating against the regulatory factors affecting the operation of cooperative society in housing provision in Ogun State, thereby suggesting ways for ameliorating those factors towards optimal housing delivery. To this end, I therefore say thank you for listening and God bless you.